welcome. How's everyone doing today? So as you're in this Zoom meeting, you have with us, we have with us Alina, which is one of probably the best expert I've ever seen on Follow Up Boss. And so this is going to be quite interactive. Alina is going to be going through all of her slides, but I love to see your face. I know Alina is going to love to see your face as well. Many of you have probably seen her post in Follow Up Boss before. If you're a Follow Up Boss user, if you're not a Follow Up Boss user, don't worry. You're going to learn a ton today. So we're really excited to go through the content. One of the questions I have for you just out of the gate for everybody that's joining is when you're thinking about lead conversion or Follow Up Boss in general, what is the number one pain point for you? Like when you're working in a CRM, or if you could have one thing solved, oh man, if I could have this one thing solved on my number one problem, what would that be? Put that in the chat right now. I'd love to see that coming in. Auto text. Okay, that's awesome. I've seen that a few times as well. What else? I'd love to see some of your comments. If you could have one thing in your CRM, or you could learn one thing today about Follow Up Boss, what would be an incredible thing for you to learn today?
Herb, I'll be addressing that in our training.
Exactly. And then Alina can touch on it as well. Well, I want to hear from you. Kevin, Kelly, Sherry, Herb, you already posted. Carrie, what's something that you would love to learn today that would just really change the way you think about a CRM or enable something about Follow Up Boss would be awesome too? I'm not seeing anything. You guys are just thinking. Emails that actually go out in bulk and get accepted by my list emails. That's a very good one, especially when you send so many emails and you put all that work into it. You want to make sure that somebody actually opens it. That's awesome. How do I get a higher open rate? Awesome. It goes along. Video texts that don't look like spam. Okay, love it. So all of this is going to be covered today, which I'm really excited about. So a little intro for Alina really quick. If you haven't met Alina before, I got the pleasure of meeting her earlier this year in Scottsdale at one of the Follow Up Boss masterminds. And I was immediately taken back. I could tell right away that she knew Follow Up Boss inside out. She was a huge community asset. And then after that, after I got to meet her in person, I started noticing that in the Follow Up Boss community that literally every single post was answered by Alina. And not only was she answering the post quickly, but she knew every single thing about the product. Like she knows the product inside out. So in talking to her, I found out that she's been a longtime Follow Up Boss user since 2016. She helps agents go from zero knowledge of Follow Up Boss to having an integrated solution that works with all of their other tools. So if they're running other lead gen tools or email marketing or whatever else they've got going on in the rest of their business, she helps integrate that and actually set up all the workflows. And today we have the pleasure of having her on this webinar, and she's going to go through in detail with showing us all the best systems that she's seen and how she sets up Follow Up Boss accounts. With that being said, I'm going to hand it over to you, Alina, and take it from here.
Great. Thank you for the introduction. So as I was preparing for this, I realized I may have tried to pack too much into this. So we may need to do a second one, but hey, not a bad thing. Yeah, like Stephen was saying, I've been using Follow Up Boss since around 2016, so 7 years now, and have really been able to dive into the ins and outs of Follow Up Boss and addressing all of those pain points you mentioned and others, which I'll be touching on in this call, and have done lots of trial and error. So because of the collaborative nature of the business I work in, been able to work with some of the top performing teams to hone in on best practices for Follow Up Boss. So on this call, I'm going to be primarily focusing on best practices for action plans and automations, some mistakes to avoid so you don't end up in spam, some mistakes to avoid so you don't get people ignoring you, and some other best practices outside of that. So before I dive into that, you may be a bit like me and you want to make sure that the client experience or lead experience is high quality. And so you may be in a group of people that's a little hesitant to use automation because you want the quality to stay high and you don't want the wrong email to send out and make someone upset, whether they're a lead you haven't reached and they get upset, or their client and the wrong email gets sent. So my goal for today is to help take off that layer of fear and show you that there are so many benefits to automation and will help grow and scale your business beyond what you can do manually as a human being. So I wanted to first focus on what you do with lead generation. For brand new leads, trying to reach someone, you want to get someone on the phone, you want to get someone to respond to you. So a couple best practices there. One, before you create any action plans for new leads, I want you to evaluate where your leads are coming from. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I may share and unshare as we're doing this, but I'm going to share my screen and show you what I mean. And this is in Follow Boss, but if you don't use Follow Boss, you can still take these principles with your CRM. And in Follow Boss, you have to be the owner account or an admin account to see this page. You would go to admin lead flow. And no, your eyes are not messed up. I'm in blur mode. I'm protecting this client's private information, so it's not going to show source names, contact information, things like that. So you'll see these things are blurred out. But on your screen, it won't be blurred as long as you're not in blur mode. And I want you to take a look at all of the lead sources you generate leads from, and then take a look at the type of lead. So if you are generating any leads online and they're not going to Follow Boss automatically, 99% of the time they can. And the most common way they do is through something called email parsing. So if you receive a lead via email from whatever lead gen provider, and that email includes the lead's name, email, phone number, contact information, if they're a seller, their property, and they're not going to Follow Boss, I would recommend making sure that the same email address you use in Follow Boss is the same email address you receive leads to. That's the only way Follow Boss can make that connection and do what's called email parsing and push those leads over. And if that doesn't work, make sure your email is actually connected. For privacy purposes, I won't show Danny's settings, but if you can go in the upper right-hand corner and click settings, if you scroll down a bit, you'll see his login, your login email address. And then underneath that, you'll either see what email address you've connected to Follow Boss, or if there's not one connected, there'll be a button asking you to do so. And that's what's necessary in order to push your leads to Follow Boss in the first place. So the reason I recommend going through this list of leads is making sure that when you're creating content that's relevant to what the lead's asking about. So you may be able to potentially group types of lead sources together, whether you have a group of lead sources that are referral fee-based sources like HomeLight or Ramsey. You can generally use a similar action plan for those versus online leads from Facebook inquiring about properties for sale. You can generally create the same content for those, or if they're third-party portals like Zillow, Realtor Trulia, Redfin, where they're inquiring about a specific property on a third-party website, you can generally use the same action plan. That way you save yourself the time of, yes, you do want to make the content personal, but you also don't want to create, 20, 30 different action plans for each lead source. You can group them together. And then what you want to do is you'll open up each lead and take a look at their initial inquiry and take a look at what they're asking about. For privacy purposes, again, I'm not going to click on the actual inquiry information, but if you're receiving leads via email, you'll see this view email button, and you pull this up and you can see more details about the person. So you make sure that what you send to the lead is actually relevant to what they're inquiring about. So I'm going to show you an example of the type of action plan to create, some best practices. I'm going to break down why I recommend certain things and saying things a certain way, and some mistakes to avoid. So the sample I'm going to show you is for a new buyer lead that's inquiring about a home for sale. And I'm going to break down the initial text first. So first, I'm just going to read it, and then I'm going to break down why it's written this way. So it's going to say something like, "Hi, Stephen, this is Elena with ABC Real Estate. I just received your request from Facebook for the home at 123 Main Street. Is this the best number to reach you on? If you'd rather not be texted, just reply stop." So to break this down, I use merge fields as much as possible to make it as personalized as possible. So I initially say their name so that it's personable. You can even play around with other merge fields. I like playing around with the greeting time. Let me scroll down a little bit here, where instead of typing in hi, you would use greeting time. And depending on what time of day the lead comes in and this text message sends, it's either going to say morning, Elena, or afternoon, Elena, or evening, Elena. If the lead comes in overnight, like after business hours, this text is not going to send at 1 a.m. Instead, it's in the queue to send at 8 a.m. the next day. So it'll say morning in that case. And then there we go. Then I do an introduction of who I am for a few main reasons, two in particular. The first is to be compliant. In this day and age, it's very important to remain compliant with texting so that your text messages get sent and they don't get blocked. You don't get your Twilio account blocked. You don't get your action plan blocked. And so to be compliant, you need to put your introduction of who you are and your company name. But that's not the only reason to do it. The other reason is best practice in Follow Up Boss is to use the Follow Up Boss styler. And the phone number that calls the lead is also the same phone number that texted the lead. So if you're sending this text message automatically with this introduction, through some testing, we've determined that mobile carriers will read that text. And in the caller ID, instead of just having the phone number, it's now going to say maybe Elena when you call. So it's more likely to show your name when they call. And then the next phrase of I just received your request from Facebook for the home at 123 Main Street is to personalize it. And it's giving the person a reason to trust you. And even if they just clicked on the ad, they may have already forgotten. So giving them a reminder of why you're reaching out in the first place and they gave you their number. Now for StreetText, it's a little bit different. And I'll show that in a second, where you wouldn't use the source name merge field, because in Follow Up Boss, the source name would be StreetText. So you don't want to say, I just received your request from StreetText. So in this case, you would say from Facebook like this instead. And then the next phrase, is this the best number to reach you on? You might think this is the dumbest thing I've ever read. Why would I ever say that? Of course it is. It's the number they gave me. But people's knee-jerk reaction is to respond and say, yes, of course. And the goal of this is to not only verify that the number they gave you is a good number and that person, but also to get them to respond so that you know that is the right person and they're going to respond to you. So their knee-jerk reactions be like, yes, this is a good number, or oops, I gave you my work number, or whatever it is. Because sometimes things autofill when people fill out forms and they don't realize what number they put. And then if you'd rather not be texted, just reply stop. The only reason for this is for compliance. Mobile carriers are looking to make sure that you use the word stop in your initial text message to people. If you don't, you're at risk. And Follow Up Boss compliance has started to automatically block text messages from being sent if they aren't compliant with things like this or the introduction. And so you can remove it at your own risk, but you're either going to get your action plan blocked or even, unfortunately, potentially sued because you're not giving an opt-out, even though they are opt-in leads. And the reason why we ask this question is to be what's called a reply-based text message. And instead of saying, let's say you're really tempted to say something like, I'm going to reach out soon, or let me know if you have any questions. Although that sounds nice and pretty and not aggressive in any way, it doesn't prompt the lead to want to respond. And the goal of this action plan is to help you start conversations. Although an action plan or a text or an email or a SMS drip is never going to replace you, it can certainly help you a lot. And so if you did say, just let me know how I can help, or I'm going to reach out soon, and then you end up calling the person, then they don't answer, now you're just stuck hoping they'll answer one of your calls, and versus if you asked a question, they could have responded to your text. And then at the same time, I send a similar short email. I think this is way too basic. I need to do more, but bear with me. I'm going to explain my reasoning why. So the initial email says, what's prompting your interest? I just received a request regarding a home for sale. What is prompting your interest in this home? And that's it. So a few mistakes to avoid. It can be really tempting to put in an entire paragraph or two or three explaining who you are and what you'll do for the lead, why work with me, here's our 20-page guide, all that stuff. That's great content, but I have recommendations of where to use it instead. And the reason for that is a few reasons. One, the lead doesn't really know who you are. They may have opted in, they may have come from a referral fee source, but they don't trust you. And plus they live busy lives. They don't have the time to open a link and read a very long email. And if you want to improve your response rates, reply-based emails get high responses, hence the name reply-based. And another reason not to include a lot of content, or even you may want this to have your branding and logo and pictures and borders and colors, although it looks pretty to you and may feel nice, the lead sees that email as an automated email versus a person actually trying to connect with them. So they're going to automatically discard it. I'm sure you've been on the receiving end of other business newsletters. You just archive it. You don't feel the need to respond or even read it. So we found that this looks human. It looks like a person's trying to connect with them because it's plain text versus lots of pictures and graphics and borders. Plus, let's say they receive the email, but now not now, it's been around for a while. If you use Gmail, Gmail has the option for people to create folders where it automatically categorizes their emails from primary to promotional. If you put a lot of links, I would say more than 3, including what's in your email signature, a lot of pictures, anything like that, email providers are just going to automatically categorize you in the promotions folder, and the person may not ever see your email. So that's a mistake to avoid if you're open to that. And then if the person did not respond, the next email sends out with another reply-based email. If you're anything like me, you want to stay informed on how the real estate market is performing, average price homes are selling for, how competitive the market is. Would it be helpful if we scheduled a time to chat? So another reply-based email. So a mistake to avoid as you're creating these is you might think, okay, great, I've written like 4 or 5 emails, I'm good. I don't need to try beyond 10 days or 15 days. I need to move on to the next person. You'd be surprised at how many touches it takes to reach a lead. A couple years ago, it was 10, and now I just checked it's 20. And that does include automated emails and texts and calls. So a mistake to avoid is not taking full advantage of what an action plan can do for you. Because these emails are automated, you can make these very long term. So our action plan lasts 2 years long, and then once it finishes, another action plan starts automatically through an automation for another year. And I know you're probably thinking that's overkill. Why would I ever email someone that long? It's a waste of time. There's a few reasons you do that. 1, email's free. It's not like you're paying per email. So why not? You're always free on sending the emails. 2, although you and I are business owners and we check our emails often, several times a day, a person who is not a business owner or maybe logged in with Facebook and gave an old email address they don't check often, they may not open their email account for a couple of weeks, a couple months, 6 months. And so the reason for sending these emails is so that you remain on the top of their inbox, so that when they do open their email, you're at the top. Versus if you just did 10 days worth of emails and it's been 6 months and then they finally open their email account, you're going to be way in the bottom on 3 or 4 pages down before they'll see your email. And data shows, again, it takes up to 20 attempts to reach someone. And so people are responding to emails that are this far down anyway.
Alina, I just want to add one thing. We've seen that too. So, like, it's amazing how long it might take for someone to reach out. But if you didn't have that email on the 9th month or the 10th month, you would have missed it. When you get a response from somebody 10 months later and it was all done for you automatically, you didn't miss them. Yeah, you just have to have it set up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and another thing I want to mention was a bonus. A bonus tip is if you create a video from yourself. You can use lots of different platforms to do it. You can use YouTube. If you do and you use Follow Boss, there's this nice little insert YouTube button and it makes the video look pretty with your thumbnail and a play button. Or there's a BombBomb integration and you can select it to be a GIF. So it looks like you're moving and they're more likely to click on it. I personally use Loom and I use a workaround so it's still a moving GIF and they'll click on it anyway. Another one's called Jump Share. So lots of video recordings out there, but avoid the temptation to make a very long video. I make it a goal to make it under a minute, if not under 30 seconds, because people's attention spans are very short, especially in this day and age of TikTok and Reels. People just keep swiping. So you want a more likelihood that people will watch the video in its entirety. So keep it short, keep it to the point, introducing yourself, offering to help. And a reason to do that is to help personalize it even more, where it feels more human. The person sees there's actually a human behind this email being sent to me. I use video in almost every email I send now, and our response and open rates are so much higher because of it. Now, to someone's question about text in putting a video in, if you use Follow Boss, you'll want to send the video from the app where you create the video one at a time instead of putting in a link. And I never recommend putting in a link to a video in a text message. One, because the person doesn't know who you are. So they're not going to trust a random link from a random person to click on it. Because in this day and age of lots of spammers and scammers, they're going to see it and then they won't want to click on it. They don't know you. And another reason is it's risky. Whenever you send a video, that's a link. So like BombBomb creates a link for you. If you put in that BombBomb link in a text message, then mobile carriers will assume that you're spam and stop sending your text messages to people, and then hurt your phone reputation and people mark you as spam. So if you're going to send a video, send it through the Follow Up Boss app if you're using the Follow Up Boss number, and you can send a video text there. And then otherwise just use the video in the email. And then I also wanted to show, let me pull it up. I didn't have it pulled up in advance. Marcus actually shared this post last week or a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was perfect for what we're talking about. A perfect image of people who buy internet leads, but then don't want to take the time to prospect them. As I mentioned earlier, it takes up to 20 times, if not more, to reach people. And the biggest mistake I see people make is making action plans too short, making their attempts to call the lead too short, where they try 1 or 2 times and then give up. And so this is a perfect illustration of just trying a couple times and giving up. And then this guy was so close. If he would have just tried a couple more times, he would have gotten the response and the ROI. So the beauty of internet leads, especially if you're doing them yourself through StreetText, is they're cheap. They aren't very expensive. And the reason for that is you're catching them before they are proactively looking, and you're not paying a big company like Zillow for it. The downside is whenever someone goes to Facebook, they aren't intentionally logging into Facebook with the thought, I'm going to go search for a house to click on today on Facebook and give my contact info. Instead, you're catching them in an emotional state where they want to see that guide. They want to see that list of homes, which is great because cost per lead is cheap. You're catching them before they go into these other portals or before they start calling other agents. But then the work starts because you have to try several times to reach someone. And on top of that, these leads are going to be 6+ months on average out before they're ready to work with you because you caught them on a more emotional decision to click on the ad. And regardless if you use StreetText or something else, people will complain that internet leads are awful and that I don't like them. But it's just because of that idea of these are top of funnel dreamer leads who are just clicking because they saw a nice picture, but that doesn't mean they're a bad lead. It means that your return on investment is going to be much higher. And in return, you just need to do more work. So it's more affordable to do it that way. It just takes more work that you need to be willing to put in. Okay, double checking. I want to make sure I'm missing anything. So to Herb's question about drip texting. So the reason Follow Boss only allows you to send one auto text is very intentional. In theme with what I've been talking about is staying compliant and protecting your phone reputation. Because the best practice in Follow Up Boss is to dial and use the Follow Up Boss number, you want to protect that number as much as possible to where when you call a lead, you don't show up as spam likely. And if you were to send drip text from the same number that you call from, you're highly likely to start showing up as spam whenever you call the lead. So although Follow Up Boss lets you manually text leads, there's no drip texting. But Follow Up Boss is something called Open API. So it lets other companies and programs plug in that do drip text. And I have a couple recommendations for you to look into if that's something that's important to you. However, with any of these recommendations, they're not going to use the Follow Up Boss number, nor do you want them to, because then that defeats the whole purpose of using them in the first place of protecting your phone reputation. So a couple to look into are Texting Betty is one, BETY. Another one is called Lead Engage. And then if you're looking for AI, look into Structurally. And that's exactly what Danny does in this account. Let me see if I can find an example of this. So this lead came in from realtor.com, and you can see the emails going out plus Texting Betty, and you can see that Claudia actually responded to the first text message. But if Claudia had not responded, then this Texting Betty drip would have kept going until she did respond. Okay, so some best practices with leads. One, you've probably heard it, but I'm going to reiterate it. You need a time block, time out of your day to call your leads and make it an appointment in your calendar where no one else can schedule an appointment, because you want to prioritize it. So I did a webinar a couple weeks ago and touched on this a little bit, so I won't dive into it today, but you want to avoid the temptation to add tasks and action plans. Although it's very common in our industry to be operating on tasks, it's not the way Follow Boss intended for you to use it for calling leads. So when I'm saying tasks, what I mean is in a new lead action plan, you going in here and adding a step and saying, okay, assign myself a task to call, and then add another task on day 2 to call again. Although it sounds nice in theory, if you are limited on time of calling leads, which you probably are every day, there's not an easy way to prioritize your tasks to say, okay, I've got 50 tasks. I can only get through 10 today. Which ones are the most important? It's very hard to prioritize those tasks. And if you fall a couple days behind, you're most likely going to have multiple tasks for one person. Then you're wasting time not only figuring out manually by opening up people, do I need to call them? No, they're not high priority. We go to the next person. Are they high priority? No. But also checking off the duplicate tasks. So instead, that's what Follow Boss created Smart Lists for, so that you can prioritize who to call. They are called Smart Lists under people because they're dynamic based on various filters you put in place. So there's no manual clicking and dragging. So if I wanted to move George from this list to another, I'm not clicking and dragging him from one place to another. Instead, people automatically disappear and appear on lists depending on what filters you put in place. I could do a whole webinar just on Smart Lists. I don't have the time to go into the filters of it, but I will have a download to share with you of the exact lists I use and the filters I use. But the goal is best practices are keep your Smart Lists to below 15 lists. Once you get above 15, it's just not realistic to get through that number of lists, especially if you have team and you're trying to get team members on board.
Lena, can I just add?
Oh, yeah.
Did you say at the end you're going to give a guide that will help people set up these smart lists?
Yes. Yeah.
Who wants that guide? Just put it in the chat right now if you'd like to get that guide of how to actually set these up. Yes, that's what I thought. That's so powerful. Smart lists are really I think that's actually one of the most genius things about Follow Boss is knowing who to work with right now in the moment. You can see an overwhelming yes. So that's awesome. Thanks, Selena, for offering that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for instance, Danny has 13 lists plus a couple extra, but he does not make it an expectation of himself nor his agents to call through all 13 every day. Look at the numbers here when you get down the list, 100 people, 1,600 people, 200 people. You're not going to get through all of those people in one day. So instead, make a priority set of lists. So for Danny, it's call through list number 1 through 8 every day. And you might think even 8's quite a bit. But because of how much you're able to segment your database through Smart Lists, you're making these more digestible. For instance, list number 1, people are in here because they're current clients he's working with. So he wants to make sure his current clients are taken care of before he adds on more business. List number 2, Danny rarely has more than one person in here because he's calling all the time. So shout out to Danny for doing his thing. But list number 2 should be short. These should be leads that you've generated that you haven't attempted to call. And if you use the dialer or you log the call, they would disappear automatically once you do. List number 3 is going to be short. They're leads you have tried at least once, but you haven't reached them yet. So they show up once a day to keep trying automatically. So if I call Deepak today, Deepak will disappear, wait one day, show up again to try again. And then so on for people responding to his text messages through an AI bot, people looking at what he uses, home bots, people coming back to his website and his hots. So he can knock those 8 out pretty quickly. And these numbers reflect his entire teams. So leads that are specifically assigned to him are even less than that, which means he's more likely to be able to call through the other lists. So best practices, time block, use the Follow Boss dialer, allow the Smart List to be your reminder of your daily calling list instead of tasks. And you might be thinking, okay, I need to, because it requires so many times to reach a lead, I need to try more than once a day. That's a great goal to have. But before you add on that filter to be twice a day, make sure you can reach that daily expectation of calling through 1 through 7 or 1 through 8 or 9 before you add on more calling that you need to do. But once you find that you can take that on, then you can certainly change the filter to not be one day. You can change it to be minutes even if you want to be super aggressive about it. But definitely start out this way first. And then also make sure you change the stage of the lead. All of this is pointless if you don't make sure that the person is staged properly in your account. And when I say stage, I'm talking about this section here, where they're no longer labeled as a lead I haven't reached. They're now a warm, considering buying or selling in 3 to 6 months, for example. And upon you changing the stage will not only put the person in the right smart list for prioritization, but also tell Follow Boss via automation, if you set up automations, stop one action plan and now start another one automatically. Now, a few other best practices. I know I'm spending a lot of time on new leads, but lots of best practices here. If you're generating a lot of leads, you're working with clients, you're negotiating, you're showing property, you're doing appointments, you may find yourself saying, great, these are all really great practices, but I just don't have the time to do this. Maybe it's not worth doing lead generation. At that point, first of all, no, it is worth it, but you may want to, at that point, consider hiring an ISA. There are 2 options for hiring an ISA. You can either hire in-house, which is the preferred way. That way they're within your company, they're in your market, you can train them and have more control over them, not control, but, and then if you need help with training, if they're brand new or you want to make sure that they do it the right way and they can handle objections, I highly recommend that you have your ISA trained by Smart Inside Sales. They have a 90-day intensive program for training ISAs. Dale Archdeacon, you've probably seen him in the Follow Boss group. He has Conversion U on Follow Boss, a great resource there. But if hiring an ISA in-house is just not plausible right now, whether it's because of time or money, then the alternative is to hire a third-party ISA where they're a company that's already an established company. So some popular ones that people use with Follow Boss are Conversion Monster and the Lead Whisperers. But definitely best to hire in-house if you can. So let's say you've done all of this effort and you finally got someone to respond to you and you think, great, but they're not ready to work with me for a year. Now what? You want to make sure that they don't go to another agent and work with them. And you want to make yourself known as the go-to agent. There's a few things you want to do. First is create a long-term drip. And I recommend starting out with simple ones, such as a nurture buyer, a nurture seller, and then a nurture buyer plus seller. Once you build that out, then you can certainly get a little more granular or niche and say, okay, now I'm going to make one for people that are renters that I need to educate on being a buyer. Or now I'm going to make one for expires I talk to and I need to nurture them about why they should work with me instead of another agent, or same with FSBO. But I recommend first starting off with these 3 before branching off. So some best practices for nurture campaigns. If you remember, I mentioned earlier about content you've created, guides you have, or why work with us information. This is where it's most valuable, because at this point you've built a little bit of trust. You've talked to them. Now you need to nurture them, keep in touch with them. That's where you can use this content. But let's say you have a guide that's 20 pages long. Don't just put that 20-page guide in one email. Instead, you can split it up. So let's say that 20-page guide has 10 tips. Instead of putting that 20-page guide in one email, you can split it up into 1 tip per email. So now you have 10 emails instead of 1. So that immediately lets you reuse your content and make the action plan longer. But then also it's going to make the client more likely to actually read the content, because 1 tip is much more digestible than 20 tips. And so some best practices on top of that are, at this point, you want to build trust and add value. So about every other email is going to be sending them some sort of educational content. Some pro tips and things to avoid are, although it's really great to create content like market updates or how competitive the market is right now, or how to buy a home in summer 2023, that content's great for newsletters and batch emails because it's relevant right now, but it's not necessarily great for a long-term action plan, where if that email sends 6 months from now, you want it to stay relevant. And you want this to be more of a set it and forget it, rather than another thing you add to your to-do list of, as soon as the market shifts, I need to change out the email. So instead, it's best practice, in my opinion, to use what's called evergreen content, which is content that's relevant no matter what's happening in the market. For example, the second email from Danny sends a link to his community guide. And then we send a general buyer educational email. And then we send a link to his reviews to help build trust and show past reviews. Or if you have video testimonials, that's a great place to put that. Or videos about home buying tips. I'll tell you tips that you can not only post on YouTube for organic reach, but also use here. And so I recommend making this long-term so that even if someone says, I'll be ready in a couple weeks, people's plans change all the time. And they might say 1 minute, I'm going to be ready. I just need to wait for this last commission check or whatever it is before I buy. And then you'll talk to them and they'll say, never mind, I need to wait another year. You need to have a plan in place to nurture them long-term. So our nurture buyer plan, for example, lasts 3 years long because of that reason. And it gets automatically paused whenever someone becomes a client because the stage has changed. So that's why stage change is so important. And let me double check my notes. So this is not meant to replace you. You still have the duty to call the lead and follow up with them and keep a relationship, but this is another layer of supplemental help. And then once you've created this action plan, don't be manually applying it. That's a waste of time. That would mean you'd be opening up a person, say, okay, now they're warm. Now I need to scroll down, go over here, pause this action plan and pause this one, and then click this plus button and search out nurture buyer. Oh, wait, no, never mind. This one's a renter. And remember which plan to use. Instead, that's what automations and Follow Boss are for. So you don't have to go to this page and click several times and remember which action plan to use when. So an example of this is if you go to admin automations, you can add one. Let's say, for example, the nurture buyer. You can say, if I change the stage to hot, warm, or cold, whatever stages you use. I then use tags to differentiate between client type. So I would say if the lead is tagged as a buyer, they'll receive the nurture buyer drip. So condition is tag as buyer, then they'll receive the nurture buyer. And then once you click save and enable, the next person you move to hot, warm, or cold will receive that automation. So to show you an example of that, let me pull up someone in Danny's account. Looks like Danny spoke to Alex yesterday, had a 2-minute conversation, and it looks like he's going to potentially be showing Alex properties. So he ended up staging Alex as hot because it was a very good conversation. And upon changing the stage to hot, it paused all of the new lead campaigns and started the nurture buyer campaign automatically. And then the first email sent out today. So glad we connected. I'll reach out from time to time. And then this action plan will continue on and send helpful info and check on that client. And then if the meeting goes well with Alex, then Danny should be staging Alex as a current client where he's showing him property. He's ready to put in an offer. He doesn't need to receive this sort of nurture drip.
Alina.
Yes.
So I'm sure a lot of people watching this now are thinking, oh my goodness, this is amazing. How do I set this up and how do I do this? And is this something that when you are working with clients, do you fully customize it out and do the training for them or for their team so that they can just focus on the small things and all the automations and all the emails are already set and ready to go?
Yes, that's what we do. At the end of this call, I'll be showing you 2 QR codes to scan. One is if you prefer to DIY, I have a guide for how to create this stuff yourself. But yes, this is what my company focuses on, is a done for you setup for Follow Boss.
So follow along, but don't feel overwhelmed. If you're thinking, oh my goodness, I would love to have this set up for me, Alina's going to have a solution for that.
Yep. Yeah, and I know we're running short on time, so I won't be able to deep dive into the other things I wanted to talk about, but 2 other automations that are important to create are a post-closing automation where upon changing the stage to past client, it triggers an email drip. So mine, for instance, sends an initial congratulations email, and then it automates asking for reviews with helpful questions to help them write the review. And we link to Google, but if you also have Zillow or Facebook, you can link to there. And then emails to check in how they're doing, suggest documents they should hold on to after closing. So ours is very long-term because past clients can eventually turn into clients again. Plus these emails can also generate referrals. So long-term post-closing drip is very helpful for that. About a year in, it turns into more of a newsletter style type drip. So you'll see here, this email says, I'm kicking off an email newsletter with home how-tos. Can I include you in the list? And this gets a lot of response when people say, yes, of course, but at least it gives them the expectation they're going to be receiving newsletter type emails in this action plan. And then the other important automation to create is back to website. especially if you're using StreetText and you're pushing people to your website, to a listing for sale or something, and you want to not only track when they're coming back via smart list, but also you can trigger an automation to say, when a lead comes to my website and views a property or saves a property, I want to send that back to website automation to re-engage them. And that gets a lot of traction. It's caught 68 people for Danny in the past 2 months for him. And then you may be thinking, what else can I do beyond this? A couple of suggestions. You can always host client events and giveaways and not only include past clients in Sphere, but also include your HOTS to those events. You can use a service like Mailbox Power, Client Giant, AM Cards, Audience.co to send something in the mail or send a present. Or you can also, and I recommend doing so, bundling all of this with StreetText remarketing, especially if they're a lead not reached or they are a lead reached and you need to stay in front of them. It's another layer to show them you over and over again that you're the go-to agent. And so StreetText has a really cool direct integration with Follow Boss where you can specify, got to move our pictures out of the way. So you can specify if a lead is in the lead stage, show them this ad. But if the lead's in the hot stage, show them this one. If they're a past client or Sphere, show this one. And what's cool is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is in real time to where if you update the stage of the lead, it updates the ad they get shown versus without StreetText, you'd have to manually upload a CSV file and then it becomes outdated a week later. This gets updated in real time. So I was hoping Stephen can show that integration, but before he does that, I wanted to show you the downloadables. And I'm sorry if I talk too fast. I had caffeine to keep me going. So sorry if I talk too fast, but it's recorded. So for anyone else, I think maybe Stephen or Marcus will send the recording later, but I wanted to share 2 QR codes with you. The first one you can scan goes to the guide I was talking about, where it shows exactly how to do what I just shared, plus more things, making sure your backend settings are set up. And although it's named for a solo agent, it's helpful for teams or brokerages as well for making sure their agents are set up properly. So I really shouldn't have named it a solo guide because it works for everybody. So in exchange for your contact information, I'll send you that guide. And then, like Stephen said, if you find this really overwhelming or you just don't have the time, you're doing too many other things already to worry about writing emails and creating systems. That's what my company and team focuses on. So if you scan this QR code, you'll be taken to our website to learn more about what we do. You can watch the demo, you can get started, or you can schedule a call with us to learn more. And from that, I'm going to ask Stephen if you can show people what the integration with StreetText and Follow Boss looks like, plus, if we have time, the ad bundles.
Sounds good. But I just want to touch on something. So first off, Alina, that was amazing. Why don't we all give her some love? That was truly incredible. Yeah, everybody covered a lot, but there was such great content in there. As you grow your business, a lot of you are probably thinking, how do I do this? How do I build these? How? You should reframe that to who. Who knows how to do that? Who has the answer? And this is a great example of what literally everything you just saw. There is somebody in this room right now here that has all of these answers. And for literally a small fee, it's completely set up for you. So I really encourage you to seek out Alina, have a conversation with her, talk to her, because if what you just saw there will probably save you and your team tens or hundreds or possibly thousands of hours in the future, and it's all automated. So just with that, I'll hop over to StreetText here. But once again, big thank you. So if you don't know who StreetText is, if you don't know much about us, I'll give you a quick intro, but I know many of you do. I see a lot of familiar faces here. We've primarily been known as a lead generating tool. So if you're looking to run Facebook or Instagram ads and you want it just done for you and know exactly what to look at and then have the templates work, that's us. That's what we do. But we've also recently done a huge integration with Follow Boss and launched our remarketing. And this is truly powerful if you're looking to stay in front of your whole database, become omnipresent, never be forgotten again, and go hand in hand with the nurturing. Some of these leads might be 6 months out, a year out, 2 years out, and you're sending those emails, you're sending those text messages. You want to make sure that you have the right ads following them as well, and that you're staying in front of those leads. And all of that ties in together to make sure that people don't forget who you are. So I'll jump into it really quick. I'm going to jump into a demo account here. Just bear with me.
This is just obviously a fake account, my account. But so really quickly, just on a high level, and feel free to ask questions, StreetText has a two-way sync. So any lead that comes into StreetText will be sent to Follow Up Boss. But alternatively, you might have a whole lot of leads or you're adding contacts into Follow Up Boss, and you can see that we're automatically going to be importing those contacts here as well. And the reason you would want to do that is because if you want to run remarketing ads on Facebook and Instagram, you're going to want to make sure that your contacts are up to date with Facebook. And StreetText will do that for you automatically. So as you build audiences, which if we have a couple of minutes, I'll go into it. But if you want to build audiences here on the left-hand side, as soon as a contact comes into StreetText that meets that category, let's just say it's got the seller tag and you have a seller audience right here, that will automatically sync to Facebook. You don't even have to if you've got a whole bunch of ads launched to your seller tag in StreetText already, as soon as somebody comes into Follow Up Boss and that tag is added by an automation or by you, it'll send to StreetText, it'll send to Facebook, and those sellers will automatically see the ads that you've pre-designed for them. So I'll show that to you in a second. The next thing is it's a perfect two-way sync. So for instance, if I wanted to add another tag here, let's just say I wanted to add mortgage first-time buyer, and I want to add this tag. You can see it's been added to StreetText, but then if I came over to Follow Up Boss, here's that lead, you can already see it. It's been added. So it's instantaneous. So anything that you do here on Follow Up Boss or you do in StreetText is going to keep you in sync. Again, just another way to make sure that you're saving a ton of time. Everything's in sync, super nice. And again, if I was to change the stage, so let's say I have a whole bunch of leads that are focused on the lead stage, but then I go ahead and I want to change this to a close stage or a buyer stage or whatever else, it's automatically going to change that on StreetText. And in addition to that, it's going to change the ads if that's what you have set up on the StreetText side. So I don't know if there's any questions coming in so far, but I'm also going to move quite quickly. Again, this is a demo account, so it's a little bit more tricky for me to show some of the things to you. But what I will show you is that StreetText has built out a whole bunch of pre-built remarketing templates that you can use, or you can use your own ads. And I'll talk about that in a minute as well. So let's just say I wanted to remarket my audience with all of these ads. You literally just, with a couple clicks, you click select. Once it loads up here, you just click next, next. You choose the audience that you want to target. So these are all the audiences on Facebook, and they're also all the audiences that we automatically create for you in StreetText. I would just pick that audience. You can also exclude audiences. So let's say I have a whole bunch of real estate agents in my database that I don't want to see my ads, or maybe I'm showing something specific to a customer appreciation event and I pick that here, but I don't want everybody in my audience to see that. You can actually have an exclude. I want to exclude a whole bunch of people from my list as an example. And so you can run those, you can customize that so exactly who's going to see it. I then just click next. I choose my budget. $1 a day or $2 a day goes a long way when it comes to remarketing. And I hit deploy, and that's it. It's built and created for you. So you can run our ads, or many of you have created your own content already, and you want to use that content that you've already created, and you want to make sure that it can stay in sync with your database and people are going to see those ads. And you can do that too through our ad bundles. So if I was to go to the ad section and ad bundles, you can see here I have 3 ad bundles already built, and I can create a new bundle. And when I create that, let me just see if I've got that here. I can literally pick any and all content that I've created, and none of this content I'm showing you right here, or actually some of it is, but a bunch of it won't be, like this one. This wasn't created through StreetText. This was created by someone in the ads manager. So I can grab these different ads, and I can scroll down to the bottom here. So to get my video out of the way, I can hit next, and I can actually create a bundle. So let's say this was going to be targeting I'll call it my expired leads. These are leads that I'm bringing into my account, and they've just expired. And I want to make sure that I don't necessarily reach out to them by phone call or email, but I want to make sure that these expired leads are seeing my content immediately, especially in regards to the kind of content I want them to see. I would then just hit deploy. It's going to launch this bundle. And as soon as somebody has the expired lead tag added in Follow Up Boss, you're automatically going to see these ads. And the really cool thing is I can rotate these ads daily, weekly, or monthly. And the reason that's powerful is, let's say I have 10 ads that I want my expired leads to see. I don't want them to see all 10 ads at the same time. And I also don't want them to, I don't want to spend even $1 a day behind all 10 ads. And I'm spending $10 a day. Instead, I want to rotate them daily. So I only pick $1 a day for every one of the ads, and our StreetText system will automatically rotate those ads daily. So you're only ever spending $1 a day, but everybody is still seeing the content and they're seeing it one by one. So they're not seeing it all at one time. And they're like, oh my goodness, these ads all over the place. They're seeing the right content at the right time. Maybe you want them to see that content for a week, and then you want that message to change to your next ad. You can do that automatically here, and StreetText will do that for you. And of course, you can expand. It's gonna, because this is a demo account, it's not gonna load the images for me. But if I open this up, you could see like these would be the ads, but again, it won't show the images. And I can change the order of these ads. I can delete them. I can add more ads to the bundle. So you can customize that over time as well. All right, that was a really quick snapshot just because I know we don't have too much time. I'm gonna maybe just answer any questions and open it up for full Q&A to Alina, to ourselves. But just before I do that, I just want to thank all of you for being here today. I think that if you take action with Alina's services, imagine what that'll mean for your business in a year. I know a lot of you have already done it, but for those that are sitting on the fence, I really encourage you to do a reach out and connect with her. All right, what do we have for questions?
And I've been responding to questions very ferociously.
Feel free if you want.
Okay.
If you have a burning question that you just want to ask, just raise your hand in Zoom. You can do that. You can click the reactions tab and you can click a hand raise. Okay, Michael, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, hi, it's Michelle.
Oh, Michelle, I'm so sorry. I read that so fast.
Everything, don't worry. Hi, Elena, great presentation. Thank you. Just a quick question. It's not a burning question, just curious. When you do those drip campaigns, you were talking about some evergreen guides. Do you provide these guides as well, or do we provide them?
Yes, I was actually just responding to you in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whenever I provide the setup, I do have pre-written content. They're not going to link to any outside source since I don't have your website backend, but I either would use content you've created on your website, or you can essentially take what I write and turn it into a blog post on your website or turn it into a video in the future.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
What if you don't have a website that you're utilizing for content? I strictly do social media and stuff.
Not a big deal. It's nice to have a website so that you can push people back and then use the pixel, but you can still take so much advantage of Follow Up Boss, and you can also use StreetText advertising. It's just a nice to have another layer of help in Follow Up Boss.
I have a website, but it was given to me just through my broker, just set up. It's a template. So I just don't utilize it. I was on the phone with StreetText. They're great. I was talking to Ira earlier today, and he highly recommended you. He might even be on here somewhere. And I'm looking to do a trial with them, but I told him I have a lot of moving parts, and I'm trying to go for my lending. I've been doing lending more than real estate for the last several years, and I was at JP Morgan Chase as well. And I'm trying to now focus more on real estate because by default, I could get some lending out of it. And there's just, I call a spade a spade. There's way more money in real estate than there is in lending side, with a lot less headache as far as I'm concerned, and red tape and compliance. So that being said, I'm looking for a real true turnkey where I can leverage StreetText and leverage you and automate everything, as would be where I'm at with this whole process.
Yeah, and Stephen, you can touch on StreetText, but yep, the setup I offer for Follow Up Boss is done for you. All we need to get started is a sign up form you fill out that takes 5 to 10 minutes, and then we do it completely for you. And then I believe Stephen or Marcus, StreetText offers it done for you as well. So if you don't want to DIY those ads, you can hire StreetText to do them for you.
Yeah, I think Ira told me that there's a trial, and I think not to put the carriage in front of the horse. I'm going to go through the trial and make sure that StreetText does what they say they do, which I'm sure they will. We just got to make sure. And no, nothing personal. And then I want to see those leads coming in, and then I'll integrate it all, and then kind of maybe bounce back to you and get it all. Is that a good approach? Or obviously I want to make sure the leads are coming in before I start integrating stuff and getting your services.
Yeah, it's actually beneficial even if you're not doing lead gen yet. So you have a foundation in place for personal referrals or Sphere past clients so that they can receive action plans as well. And you can identify your current database and segment them. And then once you add on advertising, it's just another benefit you can get out of Follow Up Boss in the setup.
Okay, I got you. And then how long is your process? Do we have any one-on-ones together sessions? What do we do to kind of get everything set up properly and automated?
Yeah, turnaround time as of today is a week and a half. So
Okay.
for people who signed up today, they would receive the setup by end of day the 26th of June. In events like this, it might get extended a little bit if we have a lot of interest, but that's average 2, maybe 3 weeks. And you can do a one-on-one discovery call with me. We'll be talking pretty much about everything I already talked about, but if you wanted to chat first, we can. Otherwise, you can just sign up. And then after the setup's done, we do provide one-on-one training, and that's done with Jenna on our team. She's our customer success manager.
And then Jenna's who helps you get all the automation set up. And then are you bouncing ideas back and forth with what content options to use in order to get that set up for automation, or?
No, this is done for you. So completely turnkey, like you said.
Okay.
There's no really work required on your part to give input, but this is all plug and play. So you can, of course, adjust the content.
How amazing is that? No work on your part. Everybody wants to hear.
Sounds great to me.
All right. Thanks, Danny. That was probably very helpful for everybody to hear too. Those are good questions. All
Thank
right,
you.
Lenny, go ahead.
Yeah, Elena, great presentation. 2 quick questions. One, I didn't get the second QR code, as did a lot of other people. Can we just email you? You sent your email through the chat, or you want to re-show the second QR code?
Yeah, and the chat, actually, I was responding to Michelle. I put the link for the solo guide download, and then I just now responded to Bobby with a link to our website to learn more about our services. Or you can email me. I put that in the chat as well.
Yeah, I see it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, certainly.
Thanks, Lenny. All right, Ken.
Hi, Elena. Thank you so much for your time today and the presentation. A lot of really good information. I just had a follow-up question with regard to Texting Betty. Is that the premier of, I think there's Call Action, there's another something Engage, of all of the ones that you had mentioned, is Texting Betty the best of the best, or the platform that's easiest to use? What would you recommend if we're going in that route? And then do you see people that are using texting in outside of Follow Up Boss, but inside of Follow Up Boss as an integration? Do you see that working better than the drip campaigns today, since so many people are much more likely to reply to a text? Or do you recommend, if you are diligently responding them with texting in your Follow Up Boss number, that's the route to go? What are you seeing best practices from a texting standpoint?
Yeah, I'll go through your questions rapid fire. Stephen, I do have to hop on another call that's scheduled for this time, but real quick, I'm not going to say that there's one solution that's the best out there. They all have different features that are beneficial. What's nice about Texting Betty or Lead Engage is they don't have a separate dashboard you have to log into. It's just integrated into Follow Up Boss, and it sends the text messages via Action Plan. Regardless of what texting platform you use, they're going to use a different number than your Follow Up Boss number. 1, because Follow Up Boss doesn't want to allow that and hurt your reputation, and 2, you don't want that to be the case anyway. Texting Betty and Lead Engage are more affordable than Call Action, but Call Action has a lot more tools. It does have its own dashboard, and it can do voicemail drops. So it just depends on what you're looking for and your budget of what's going to be the best fit. And then a lot of my clients still use both email and text, because sometimes we'll give you a bad number and now all you have is a good email. And so you can get people to respond via email. So a lot of clients will use both at the same time. Sometimes people will read their email, and sometimes they'll read their text messages.
Okay, thank you.
Big thank you, Elena. I know you have to run. If you'd like the recording for this, just send us a message back and we'll get that to you. Just huge shout out again. Thank you so much, Elena. I think you had the screen moved, but you moved over. I was like, oh, you're off already.
Oh,
and if you have any questions, just use that QR code or that email and we'll take it from that. Thanks everyone for being here today.
Awesome. Thank you all. Bye-bye.